This is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
I really am not exaggerating with how unbelievably horrible this film is.
It is absurd.
It's so bad.
They stopped everything in the movie to order a thumb drive off of Amazon.
Bezos!
It is an absolute travesty to cinema.
I try to see the good in every movie, but I gotta tell you, this movie sucks.
No one sets out to make a bad movie. It was misunderstood. We failed with the critics. Now, go over to the analytics.
Was this one giant advertisement for Amazon?
The explanation for that is very simple.
I want you also to address one of the more popular comments that I saw.
Bingo. That's good for us. You know, the internet is a great anonymous place to throw your frustration and hate. Did I pay attention? Yes. Does it affect us?
Alright, a little bit of context. On July 30th, 2025, Amazon Prime released the movie War of the Worlds on their streaming platform. It's based on the classic sci-fi novel that has been adapted multiple times before, including by Steven Spielberg in 2005. But what makes this one different is that the entire film takes place on a computer screen. It is essentially trying to tell a blockbuster-scale alien invasion story, but on a shoestring budget by utilizing the trendy screen life genre. Despite its big IP and well-known actors, however, upon its release, there was practically a non-existent marketing campaign. Other than a few posts here and there, Amazon didn't really push it. They didn't even upload the trailer on their own YouTube channel, but rather make a new one just for that. So by all means, this film was probably going to fly under the radar. Except, as soon as the first wave of people saw it, it went viral. With all kinds of memes, reviews, and video reactions getting tens of millions of views all over the internet, with people collectively calling it one of the worst movies ever made. It debuted with an almost impossible to achieve 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it quickly entered the list of 100 worst movies of all time. I mean, look at it. It's even the main photo of that list now. Basically, overnight, War of the Worlds became one of the most talked about movies of the year. It reached #1 on Amazon Prime, maybe for the wrong reason, but either way, I wanted to hear the other side of the story. So I reached out to the producer, and not only did he agree to talk to me, but he even brought in the lead editor of the movie, just so we can really get into it. Let's start at the beginning. How did this movie come about?
Very simple. Timur Bekmambetov, the director, producer, he and I had a working relationship on and off for about 13 years or so. And he called me one morning and asked me if I had any ideas for his screen life genre, this format. I said no, but I told him I'd think on it. I really had no ideas. I admired the format for the execution, for the cost, and also for the box office gross that he had on Searching, Missing, and the two Unfriended films at Universal. So it was clearly a very strong format. I had no ideas for it. I never even thought about it. However, about 3 or 4 days later, I called him back. He was in Europe at the time, and I pitched him the concept of let's take your format of Screen Life, but let's drop in a tentpole idea. So I pitched him War of the Worlds and my take on it. And essentially, I wrote up a few pages and sent it to him. Ultimately, the trigger date of, I believe it was November 11, 2020, was our first principal photography date. And we shot for, I believe, 15 days. And throughout the rest of the post-production process, we did some occasional pickup shots with the actors in their location, whether they were using a high-quality 8K portable camera they were holding, or if we intercut with some of their 4K iPhone stuff. So that's pretty much how we assembled the movie, shot it all physically. And then more or less, Charles came in pretty early in the post process.
I came into this project specifically because I had experience in the format. I'd worked on a few other projects, and it's a very niche genre. There's actually very few people who can do this, I think. That's what gave me the opportunity most likely. Was I scared of entering this project? Yes, I was terrified, frankly, when I first got the call. And this movie, I think, is probably the most challenging Screen Life movie that's been made so far. Most of the time, there's about 6 video feeds on this app at all times. And on top of that, then you have, Ice Cube, who is on calls with other characters. I think there's a scene where he's on 2 calls at the same time or something like that, So there's some scenes where you end up with, about 10 video layers, 10 performance layers. And then on top of that, there's all the other computer layers. And you have to keep track of all this, make it work, make sure that everybody is able to track and follow what matters on the screen. And then, and you have the camera choreography as well. So, all of that is, it's a mountain to keep track of.
And as we went through a very long post period, which took us about 2 years, I'd say, there were a lot of interruptions throughout this process. I've seen comments of people noting that, oh, you shot it in late 2020 and the movie's released in 2025, July, just to kind of hit that. I would say we experienced about 5 significant delays throughout the entire delivery process. That is production, post-production, and then ultimately delivering it to the studio. And if I can just jump to the first delivery to Universal, because initially this was made for a theatrical release to Universal. And importantly, once you turn in a movie, the studio, they're highly creative people. They're very professional. And they also show their marketing people, distribution people. A lot of comments come back in, written, very clear, annotated comments, time-coded. And then Charles and I would have to go back in, right, and address all of those comments. So it was a big team effort. And towards the latter stages, I'd say about 6 months out before final delivery, it was just Charles and I narrowing down everything because, there's a lot of people talking in the room. So we narrowed down everything to stay absolutely center stream on the A, B, and C stories. And once you have that draft, that version of the movie, you start showing people, right? So we would screen the movie often for friends and family or additional editors or, other actors or agents, managers, people that are in our group that can give us critical comments. And with that last batch of comments and studio notes, Charles and I went for about 10 months really fine-tuning the movie every day for, 8, 10, 12, 14-hour days every day. And once you turn it in, final, then it's in the studio hands. And last but not least, the studio looked at it, liked it very much. They had to come to the decision of, with any movie, whether it's X amount of money budgetarily or if it's, 200 million, they have to determine whether or not they are going to spend, in addition to the movie's cost, another 30, 50, 80 million dollars to promote the picture worldwide. This was the kind of movie that they weren't necessarily sure would work in the theaters. So they invited the big mainstream, right, branded streamers in, and Amazon saw the Amazon character, which we'll address in this call, and identified clearly this would work wonderfully for them on their platform worldwide. And here we are, cut to 3 weeks later in release, and it's a smash hit for Amazon.
Patrick, can we focus a little bit on the filming process? I'm very interested about, especially during the pandemic, did the actors do takes with other actors or were they recording on their own?
So we basically had an office building that we customized, rooms, offices, conference rooms, what have you, for each character. And that's how we shot it. So initially, for the main percentage of the production time, let's call it 15 days, just all in 15 days. Yes, we coordinated with the actors wherever they were. Like when Eva Longoria was out in the middle of the California desert shooting the meteor scene when the first tentacle breaks out of the rock, those were remote. Those were done with the director only for the most part. And our first AD brilliantly laid out the schedule to maximize actor to actor. right? So whereas Rich Lee, our director, would have a screen or two screens in his directorial office setup, he would be able to interact with both actors in live time, real time, and also get the actors to see each other so they could act with each other.
Now, one of the most popular comments I've seen is people talking about the green screen reflection in his eyes. Where did that come from? And could it not have been fixed later on?
Yes, so it's twofold. First of all, we attempted to remove as much of the green as possible in the reflection of his lenses. And I saw those comments too. We spent a lot of time going frame by frame by frame by frame to remove as much green in the glasses as possible. We didn't get all of it. We were constrained by budgetary issues in that we just didn't have that much money to fix some of the green. But as the green itself, some of it was light reflecting off of the rear office walls. So for the most part, what you see in Cube's background on his left and right sidewalls and the background, that's all a set. That is a set that we built inside of a conference room. But the back office wall was a shade of green. So some of the lights that we were the key lights that we were illuminating the actor with and over his computer screen and his desk in his background was picking up some of that green. And we couldn't get all of it.
Charles, I want you also to address one of the more popular comments that I saw, that there were a few moments when a little shot would loop a few times and would be able to see that it's the same reaction. So could you talk about that? And what are some of the challenges with editing a screen live film, particularly, that people just don't think about?
It's hard to talk about it without actually looking at the specifics. I think in some cases, it may look like something is repeated, but it's not exactly, But, whatever we did, it was intentional. It was to make the scene flow a certain way, to make us feel a certain way. One of the big challenges, especially with this movie again, is that it's kind of almost real time, it's compressed real time. And so getting the pacing right is also another challenge that I think are hard to gauge because it's action packed, right? So it needs to move fast, but you also need to be able to absorb all the information that's necessary to understand how the movie is moving forward, right?
What about this stock footage? That was, again, one of the most common comments I've seen online.
Sometimes you get pretty restricted in what you can actually use, to work for our needs. So that's what it was.
Now, I have to address the elephant in the room.
It's not a movie. What you're watching is one big ad for Amazon.
There is a crucial plot point in the film where an Amazon drone comes in to save the day.
Was this one giant advertisement for Amazon?
No, it wasn't. Amazon didn't see it until the movie was all the way done. We never intended for Amazon to release the movie. We always thought Universal was going to release the movie theatrically. The creation of Mark of an Amazon driver was simply because during COVID, in the early months of COVID, when you weren't going to the grocery store, or you couldn't get toilet paper or paper towels, you couldn't get these basic things, or you couldn't buy more than one of them. Who was bringing us individually to our homes all these products to keep us going, to keep us neutral, to keep us surviving? Amazon drivers, FedEx drivers, UPS drivers. These people, these individuals are heroes. They are unsung heroes. They're not identified as such. It's not people's dream to become delivery people, but at the end of the day, they are rendering a impersonal service to humanity, and they are doing so without ego. So we wanted to really have Mark and his van stand out. We wanted it to be recognizable, universally understood that this is a part of society that serves a very important part. Then the drone, we had to figure out, how do you get Ice Cube a USB stick with a virus ready to be uploaded at his location when he's 2 miles away from where Mark is. Mark could not traverse through the streets, right? So the drone came into play. The reason Charles and I decided to put the Amazon Prime Air bezel on the drone screen was because we needed to clearly differentiate the otherwise static screens of Cube's office screen.
And there was also, sorry to interrupt, Patrick. There's two drone feeds in that scene. There's the drone that Dave is piloting, and then there's the drone that Mark is piloting. And so it was very confusing for a time, the edit, when you didn't have the Prime Air overlay on the Amazon drone, basically. So we needed to add that for clarity.
And as to Cube going onto the Amazon.com site in order to purchase the USB stick and then trigger the delivery, right? That was the only way that the drone, which was pre-programmed to deliver to the correct address, could get to Cube, right? So we had to use those opportunities, real life opportunities, into the movie. The Amazon gift card, I would like to address that because that seems to stick out for people. When Mark's drone gets caught upside down in the street, Faith connects to that guy in the street in his tent. Unfortunately, LA has a huge homelessness problem, but we wanted to also take the everyman who is not appreciated and give that person the opportunity to help save the world, which he does. He braves and risks his life to go out into the middle of the street and turn the drone over. He is incentivized with a financial offer. And how do you get someone like that immediate money, cash in hand? Amazon gift card. Who could authorize that? Mark. It just was organic.
So does this mean that after Amazon licensed it, they did not add any changes? They did not say, put our logo in here, anything like that?
No. Nothing.
Now we're getting to the release, and there's unfortunate news, but critics don't receive it well. It debuts with a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, first of all, do you care about that? And second of all, does it affect you in any way?
We didn't know how the movie was received because it wasn't promoted in a way that would suggest it's about the themes that are relevant to individuals, you, me, right? I mean, ultimately, Cube, being a DHS employee, working for the government, saving the world with his kids is not relative at all to anyone in the world. But Cube, being a dad, saving his kids and family is relatable, right? So we were going for that storyline with this complete reactive occurrence happening around them in order to bring them together. That was the movie's through line. That was the movie's intent. Instead, getting back to the 0 score and the aggregated comments, instead the movie was received as an enormous disappointment, as if it was to be this gigantic $200 million tentpole. It was never intended for that. It was intended to be an innovative way to shove a tentpole into the Screenlight format. And we thought it would be, in a way, kind of immediately relatable in the sense that people have been working on Zoom and Microsoft Teams for 5 straight years. So all of that was not received. No one really picked up on that. And therefore, the movie, as it relates to the 0 score, appeared to be an enormous creative failure from the critics' standpoint. I think they went into it, I'm assuming, they went into it expecting something much grander in scope, probably by way of the title being misleading. War of the Worlds implies something gigantic, enormous. So that's the only kind of way I'm thinking about it. Were we disappointed? Yes. Did we feel as creators, as filmmakers on the whole, did we feel misunderstood? Completely. That's all fine and good. That was clearly laid out to us. We failed with the critics, and as a kind of catch-all of a website, we failed miserably, right? With a 0.
Now, there are the film critics, and then on the other side of the coin, there is the audience. And people definitely had something to say about this film. I think I've seen like 40 or maybe 50 million combined views on memes, reaction videos, reviews, and just the majority of those were either negative or just straight up making fun of it.
There's a sort of similar phenomenon going on with audiences is what Patrick was talking about. I think there was, a misunderstanding about, what the expectations should be with this movie. And I think people were reacting to that a lot. Often people can say that, love and hate are related. I think they are in a way, you know what I mean? I think what the reaction is saying is that people are having a strong reaction to the movie, which is not the one that we were hoping for necessarily, but I think, it's one of those things where I think it's probably a little bit misunderstood now, and the way that the film is digested over the years is what's going to be more telling, I think, as far as what we've achieved with it.
Absolutely. It's a cult classic in the making. I can already see that.
That'd be great.
Patrick, how do you feel about the audience response, the memes, the posts, all of that? Do you pay attention? Do you look at them? Do they affect you?
It affects you for about a minute, 5 minutes, the bad stuff, because, the internet is a great anonymous place to throw your frustration and hate. And everyone's going through very intense experiences now in our economy, in our social atmosphere. There's just a lot going on that are challenging people, and any outlet that they can express frustration, anger, disappointment, that's just going to absorb everything. Charles and I are very close to the movie. We know word for word, we know every shot choice and all that kind of stuff. But I have gone back to watch certain sequences on Amazon properly in 4K on a big screen, and you look at it and you study it. Was that well executed dramatically? Emotionally, right? Stakes, anxiety, fear, drive. You got to look at this impersonally, objectively. If we had 10, 15 million more dollars to make the movie, yeah, it would have been more polished and glossy, and we would have been outdoors a lot more. But a lot of the critiques of the movie are dealing with personal, very subjective things that people dislike. And you can't control any of it. You just gotta in this business, like any business, music, art, painting, poetry, ballet, opera, live performances, movie making. You got to do your best, and you really got to throw yourself into it, and then you got to get it out there. Just get it out there. So, do I pay attention? Yes, I look at it at where can we do better? Where were our decisions right? Where were they not so right? So I know we did our absolute best. And I mean, we called in every favor personally and professionally to do the best job we could. So our effort was so earnest, right? If people responded to that, great. If they didn't, great. Does it affect us? Yeah, but at the end of the day, you keep moving and you look at the broader successes of the movie, financially and worldwide audience, and 3 weeks in release. Where are we? We're the number 2 watched movie worldwide on Amazon in the world, and we have been that way for 3 weeks.
Despite the critical response and all the negativity online, was this movie actually successful?
Yes, it was successful, period. I mean, when the numbers are added up for August, the fact of the matter is War of the Worlds was the number 1 most watched movie worldwide on Amazon for its first 7 days without putting any marketing or promotion into the movie. It has now retained for its subsequent 2 weeks after the first week in number 1, it's retained its number 2 position of the most watched movie worldwide on Amazon's Prime platform. And we are approaching, I believe, right at the 800 million minutes watched within 3 weeks, which is significant.
So when it's all said and done and, the dust settles, how do you look back on this whole experience?
While you're working on a movie, you lose perspective very easily about, how the movie feels. Anybody who's watching a movie is watching it for the first time. They're experiencing it for the first time. And so they feel everything that they're supposed to feel for the first time. And, and if you watch a movie multiple times, you watch it 5 times, 10 times, you lose some of that after a while, right? It becomes, you kind of become numb to the emotions you're supposed to feel while watching the movie. And while you're making a movie, you have to multiply that, by a factor of 10 or 100. You watch, Patrick and I have seen the movie, multiple versions of the movie, hundreds of times, and at the beginning, it's always, there are things that are not working the way that they're supposed to. And so you kind of like, you have to imagine it's almost like sculpting, you're chipping away little by little, trying to give it the shape that it's supposed to have. But in that process, you lose a little bit of perspective. So it's not, we're always doing our best, but it's not always possible to get it fully right. It's very, very hard. Very few people do it, I think.
No one sets out to make a bad movie. Period. Ever. No one rolls out of bed to go work 12, 14, 16 hours a day, sometimes 6, 7 days a week, in our case, to make a bad anything. We were only trying to entertain. It's unfortunate that the movie was hated or group hated or just piled on top. We have no control of that. You can only look at the end results and know if your effort was justified. And if we ascend to hold the number 4, number 5, or number 6 most watched movie on Amazon's platform ever, then we have totally been victorious. If it ascends to, as you suggested, potential cult status, we'll see. So we intended to make a good movie. I think we made a really good movie for the money we had, and we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
To finish it off, I ended up watching the movie twice, and I have some thoughts. First of all, I love the screen life genre. I've made an entire video about it and why I think it's awesome, so the fact that it takes place on a computer screen doesn't bother me at all. When it comes to the film itself, I almost started second guessing myself because I was entertained. Is it going to win any awards? No. Is it taking itself seriously? No. And neither did I. I just had fun watching it. It actually reminded me of another interview I did recently with an early VFX pioneer from Lucasfilm who said that the most important rule of cinema is
thou shalt not be boring.
And this movie could be anything, but boring is not one of those. This whole situation raises a lot of questions about film criticism, opinions, over-exaggeration, hive mentality, and even filmmaking in general. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. I read all of them, and I'll see you in the next one.